Well, hi, everyone. I am your host, Mike Hingson, and welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Mindset, where inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected meet. And the reason it's worded that way, people still ask me why I say that. The reason it's worded that way is that when we talk to diversity people, they'll talk about race, gender, sexual orientation, and so on, and they never talk about disabilities. So unfortunately, the ship has mostly sailed when it comes to including disabilities in diversity, no matter what they say. So we won't let them do that with inclusion, which means it's inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected. And today we get to deal with a lot of all of that. The unexpected is anything that doesn't have anything to do with inclusion or diversity. But today we do get to talk about inclusion a lot in some esoteric and maybe not so esoteric ways. Our guest today is Amy S.P. Wilson, and I just discovered, as Amy showed me, if you were to ask your smart speaker, like my Amazon Echo, who is Amy S.P. Wilson, it will tell you that she is the CEO of the Safety Positive Foundation, and we're going to talk more about that. So we'll get there. Anyway, Amy, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're glad you're here.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a privilege.
And it's nice to know that the Echo knows your name.
Yeah, that I'm still kind of flabbergasted that that's a thing, but definitely gives you some street cred, I guess.
Yeah, it probably means that there certainly aren't very many Amy S.P. Wilsons, so that works.
Yes.
Well, why don't we start the way I kind of really love to? Why don't you tell us sort of about the early Amy growing up and some of that sort of stuff?
So in my younger years, I was born and raised in the state of Missouri and have what I consider a biker family. We did a lot of traveling on motorcycles. I was riding my own dirt bike at the age of 4. And so really tomboy at heart, but loved, wrestling and fighting with the cousins. And at the age of 10 is when I was diagnosed with Stargardt's, and that put me on a different path, because at the age of 10, my dream was to be a motorcycle mechanic and join the Navy. And at the time, I did not have any expectations that a blind person could do either. So it really put me on a different trajectory of what I thought my life was gonna be like. And I of course went on with school and that sort of business, but I loved wrestling so much that I became the Missouri School for the Blind's first lady wrestler. And that led me into being part of the United States Association of Blind Athletes, where I was on the first women's judo team that they had. And so just got real passionate about personal safety in different ways. But due to my eye condition, I couldn't take hits to the head. And so there went my martial arts career, so to say, or so I thought. And led me into going to college and get my first bachelor's degree in psychology and so on. But I have people tell me that apparently I have been pioneering new things my whole life. And when I have to talk about myself and talk about I was the first to do this and first to do that, yeah, it's a very sobering reminder of those steps that I've made in my life.
Right. I'm reading your bio. It says that because of Stargardt, you weren't at one point able to continue kind of dealing with martial arts. What did Stargardt specifically have to do with that?
So it affects my retina, and I noticed the more hits that I was taking to the head and being thrown, I was having more cloudy spots in my vision. And when I stopped doing those things, it significantly reduced the amount of things I wasn't able to see. Mm-hmm. And so that's how that played into that.
Tell me a little bit about what Stargardt is. I'm not sure that everyone listening or watching will be familiar with it.
Correct. Yes. So Stargardt's is a juvenile form of macular degeneration. So you hear of, your grandparents, or maybe you're a person of experience, as I like to say, in your later years. And you hear about people getting macular degeneration. I essentially just got macular degeneration at the age of 10. So little bit of a flip. And of course, again, being a first, I was the first person in my family to have any kind of blindness, low vision. And so it really shook everything.
Is Stargardt's a genetic kind of situation?
So I learned that the only way that a person can get Stargardt's is essentially by your parents getting together. It's not a medication defect, which is what they originally told my mother. So she carried a lot of guilt with that. And when I went to seek a different doctor, he had me do some, I guess, genetic counseling is what they called it, because I had concerns of my son having it. And they were like, no, it doesn't work. And they explained it. I was like, well, that'd have been helpful in my younger years.
Yeah. Just sort of the right combination of things getting together that brings it on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, where do you live today?
I live in the great Show Me State.
So you're still in Missouri.
Yes.
Okay.
I've moved to a couple other states. I spent a year in Alaska where my son was born. I lived in Indiana for a little bit. I pass on that. And fortunately, I was able to come back to Missouri.
So where in Missouri are you?
Close to Kansas City area.
Okay.
About in that area. But
right.
I like it because I can take the train back and forth between Kansas City and St. Louis. So
yeah. Well, trains are very useful things to have around. When I lived on the East Coast, would use the train a lot. And of course, going from New Jersey into New York, we had New Jersey Transit and other things. So we had a lot of train stuff. But out here where I live now, there is a train that stops here once at 4:30 in the morning. If I want to go to San Francisco, I'm not going to do that on the train, I don't think, because you actually have to go to Los Angeles and then get another train to go to San Francisco, because the train that comes from Los Angeles stops here and then I guess goes east. So, oh well, one of these days, maybe there'll be more trains and more mass transit, and that'll be a good thing.
Exactly. I know in Europe, trains are used very heavily, and people that come over here are constantly surprised that we don't have more sufficient trains. And so hopefully, like you said, with time, we'll get some more transportation going.
There's a big argument and a brouhaha going on out here right now because Los Angeles wants to create a gondola system to go from downtown LA, the train station, to Dodger Stadium and stop along the way. And there are people who are saying, no, because you're not going to get that many people on it. It's just not going to be worth the cost. So it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out.
Absolutely.
I do agree that if you're going to do that, you have to have a lot of people using it, and you have to be able to transport a lot of people. So it will be interesting to see how that works out.
I can very much agree with that.
Life goes on, right?
That it does.
So you yeah, go ahead.
I said we've heard the same debate here in Missouri about different, options for trains. So yeah, it's always an ongoing conversation.
When we first moved to New Jersey, we learned that with the Americans with Disabilities Act, they were finally catching up, if you will, to doing something. And the something where we lived in Westfield was to make the train station accessible and access to the train to be accessible. And what that meant was that they actually had to build a platform and ramps up to the platform so that a person in a chair, for example, like my wife, could transfer straight across and roll onto the train. Because before the platform was raised, the trains have these big, huge, high steps built into them. Each step is like 18 inches tall, and you've got 3 steps to go into the train. Well, you're not going to really do that in a wheelchair. And there was major opposition from people in Westfield to putting in the ramps, putting in the platforms, because they said, well, but this is going to slow us down if we have to go up the ramps and can't just run to the train and jump on the train. Why don't you just have somebody at every station who will lift people in wheelchairs onto trains? Yeah, that's going to really work, right?
Yeah, that's not feasible.
No. And it didn't, and the argument didn't hold, fortunately, and the platforms were built, and the reality is it didn't jeopardize anybody, other than maybe make them arrive 30 seconds earlier rather than being so lazy. But the arguments that people have, but it'll be interesting to see how the train thing works out, because they do need to have more mass transit out here.
Absolutely, 100%.
So you went off to college, and what did you do in college?
College stuff, but because I was unfamiliar with how to really maximize your college experience, I didn't really, have a plan once I got done with college. All I knew was I needed to go to college.
Go to college.
Yeah. And, cause that's what's going to make your life better. Okay. I can follow that plan, but what's the plan after? Like nobody had that. They just knew, go to college. Oh, okay. And so I tried to get some different jobs unsuccessfully. And then I ended up getting married and moving to Alaska. And so did some different jobs up there. And through my experience of being married during that time, I also shared with people that I'm a domestic violence survivor. And it's one of the things that I really wish the disabled community was having more conversations about this, because I know that I'm not alone. And when I share it, I always have people come forward and me too. And I'm like, yes, like we support one another. And fortunately, I was only in that marriage for 3 years and got out of it, spent a couple more years in Indiana. But then when I moved back to Missouri, I learned about some blindness consumer organizations and started getting involved with those. I also at the same time heard about a self-defense program for the blind, and I'm like, wait a minute, there's something that works for us. So I jumped on it, became an instructor, became very involved in that particular organization, and due to some different circumstances, realized that was not a healthy environment, and spent probably a year not doing that, but then had some people contact me to get another self-defense program going. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. So yeah, that's, but I've taken, in that time of me, teaching self-defense, I also worked with my local dojo and would help with my son's classes. So, I've definitely got the personal safety, self-defense experience down at this point, I feel like.
So in other words, maybe if there were a domestic violence situation today, you could turn the tables and be the one to beat up the other guy.
So that's, because I will share that is a common thought with all my
I
experience.
Understand. Yeah.
Yes. However, in June 2019, I experienced sexual assault by somebody. And it's really what got me to tell people that personal safety, you need to be proactive about it, especially in the disabled space. It is so very vital in that realm.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, there's only so much you can do, and you're right. It's a matter of being, as you say, personally safe. And it is so important. And I think so many people, especially I think a lot of blind people I know about, aren't as aware of their surroundings as they need to be, even just
Mm,
in walking, even if it's not a safety issue, that is where you're endangered from another person, but just being aware of your surroundings and being able to travel. I remember living in Boston, and at the time, and I don't know if it's still the same or not today, but Boston or Massachusetts had the highest accident rate per capita in the country. And this was back in the late 1970s into the early 1980s. And I knew it, and it was just one of those factoids, if you will, that helped me stay really aware. So whenever I crossed the street, I really made sure that the traffic was going the way I wanted to go. And I listened extremely carefully to what the traffic was doing around me, because any moment a car could come whizzing around a corner, nobody else would have seen it. And if I weren't listening for it, I might not have been able to judge appropriately whether it was safe to go or how fast I had to go to get across the street. So the reality is that we really do need to be situationally aware. And I think it's not just true for people who happen to be blind, but it is especially true that we need to work on that and be aware of our surroundings.
100%. That is like one of the first things we started offering right out the gate, when it came to safety positive, is having discussions about personal safety topics, because it makes you more situationally aware. I know that, now that I have the mindset of being proactive about my personal safety, I am so keyed up on situational awareness that I sometimes freak out people, because I'm like, and pay attention over there, pay attention. And they're like, how? And I'm like, well, the more you learn about safety education, anything in the personal safety realm, it just helps you to become more situationally aware, so you respond faster. You don't have to sit there and go, well, what was that I learned? No, that's not what we want you to have. We want you to be, kind of studying up on it so much that it becomes second nature for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. All too often we learn something and then we just we sort of memorize the lesson, and we don't memorize what it is we really need to do. It isn't, well, what did I learn? You need to get to the point where it's second nature, where it's just part of you, whether it's situational awareness or a lot of things. Even good musicians
yes,
type do what they do because it's become second nature.
Yes. And we talk about that. It's a journey. You're not going to jump from, being a beginner, guitar player, kind of like you're, musician, to being able to play on a, stage with 5,000 people overnight. It does not, it is a process. And so, reminding people to give themselves grace, and it is a work in progress. So, there's going to be days you mess up, but that's okay. You do better tomorrow, on all those different situations.
The more you practice it, though, and the more you work on looking at lessons and looking at the things that you do and practice making them second nature, the easier it becomes. But it is a muscle, the mind, that you have to develop.
Yes, we basically tell people your most important tool is your mind. So many people want that quick fix of having the pepper spray or this, that, or the other, and it's like, no. Your mind is your most important tool in your arsenal. So take care of it. It's your biggest investment in life.
Yeah, and it's the most important one, and it will do so much more for you. And the more you truly use it, the easier it becomes to use. But you've got to make that effort to make that happen.
Yes.
So you got through college. You got, I think, what, a degree in psychology, as I recall. And you said you went and worked on various jobs, and I gather nothing really struck a nerve.
No, I actually went back to school and got a second bachelor's degree in social work because I knew I wanted to work with the disabled community. And so I, of course, was advocating in my own classes for disability rights and driving my fellow students crazy. But I'm like, we're in social work and we're not learning about disabilities. This is madness. You're going to be, working with at least, half the people have some sort of disability in some fashion, and we're not even having a conversation about it. So, but I guess I actually, before I got real involved with personal safety, here more recently in the last couple of years, I actually was a Mary Kay consultant for a while, and had some fun with that. It's a great company. They're real supportive. They call it kind of the pink bubble, but I learned a lot about marketing and sales through that. So I constantly am telling my team, I'm like, yeah, that's a Mary Kay thing. That's a Mary Kay thing. Yeah. But they've been around for so many years. There's obviously, like I said, a method to their madness.
They kind of know what they're doing.
Yeah. They've got systems down. So, yeah.
So when did you get your social work bachelor's degree? When did you graduate with that?
2016.
Okay. So that was 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then you did other things and so on, but eventually, what caused you finally to form Safety Positive Foundation?
I essentially got madder than a hatter because we weren't offering choices. It was just this one self-defense program, and I'm like, well, what about teaching people to advocate for themselves or having discussions or this or that? And I kept getting shot down time and time again, from the leadership in those organizations. And I actually had a couple people who pulled me aside and really strongly encouraged me to start my own non-for-profit. And I was like, excuse me, me, be the leader. I don't know how I feel about this. So, but luckily they convinced me. I had other people convince me. And it really is a big passion of mine to just make sure that the blind community has as many personal safety choices as everybody else does. Because historically we have not. So
you're saying some of the major consumer organizations kind of discouraged it at first?
They
or
really
from
just
elsewhere.
Well, it's from elsewhere. I wouldn't say some of them. I'm not going to throw shade on the major groups.
No.
But it was the companies that were teaching self-defense really only focused on just hands-on self-defense, and I'm like, and it was either release or break body parts. And I'm like, not everybody's comfortable breaking body parts. Like, we need some choices. We need to teach people to advocate for themselves, to speak up. That is the bigger thing that I have found is people not understanding the power of their words and their language to, get themselves out of situations.
Yeah.
It's usually a freeze response. And I know because I was personally guilty of that for many years. And, so yeah, I'm thrilled that I don't struggle with that nowhere near as much as I used to, but I can recognize that it is a huge need within our community.
So when did you actually form the foundation?
March 3rd, 2023 was when we officially launched Safety Positive Foundation.
So it's fairly new.
Yes.
Well, about a year and a half old.
Yep. We're still a baby.
Well, that's okay. Do you find that men and women are interested in personal safety and so on, or is it just women or just men or what?
We have both. I'd say at our events, it's half and half. I get more men volunteering, to work behind the scenes on stuff, because personal safety is primarily a male dominated profession, which makes me kind of a odd woman out. But we are not for profit, so I'll take the help wherever I can get it.
Sure. Well, even if you were for profit, it would make sense to do that. But yeah, I hear you.
Yes. Yeah.
So exactly what does the Safety Positive Foundation do?
So we offer, again, a variety of choices for personal safety. We have what we call our Safety Positive Guide that gives our blind community 24/7 access to training and resources. And so that's a resource all by itself, because we put in there motivational information, resources, asking discussion questions. But then we also have chapters in our guide to where people can take our courses, where they can go from reactive to proactive on their personal safety. We also have in that guide links to what we call our weekly tea times, and that's probably one of our most popular services, and that's where we're having the space for discussions on personal safety. Each month we do a different topic, and we have also added verbal craft, which is a self-advocacy and assertiveness communication training. And we've actually had that training from the very beginning, because again, I knew in my experience that people really needed to learn that advocating piece. Like, we're told to advocate, but never given a formula. And we finally have a formula with verbal craft. So it makes me very excited. And then in just this year, when we started getting into our second year, we shifted away from focusing on the psychological safety to that physical safety aspect. And I became the first blind woman pepper spray instructor with Sabre. So that was exciting. And then we created our own hands-on self-defense program that focuses on the fundamentals of self-defense. We created this course because we knew people needed some pieces. So if they wanted to go take a martial arts class on a consistent basis, or if they wanted to go take that self-defense class, they would have some language to talk with the instructors, and this is how you can assist me. And so, yeah, those are pretty much what we offer. But and we're partnering with other companies, organizations to bring in more resources and training for our community. So, like you said, it's only been a year and a half, but yeah, we're bringing it when it comes to the choices.
Tell me more about verbal craft. What that is all about, or how does that work?
So, at the core, verbal craft was developed as a crisis de-escalation communication training. And of course, for the purposes of the blind community, we realized that it also helps with teaching you self-advocacy and assertiveness in your communication. So, say somebody comes up and grabs your arm trying to assist you. Verbal craft has we work with you to personalize your own formula. We also have a verbal craft club where people can come in and practice maybe a scenario and get better at their skills. I know for me, when I first, because I did not even know of verbal craft. Again, I went to hearing about all the, need to advocate for yourself. And I'm like, how do I do that? But it was in November of 2022 that I finally was able to take verbal craft. And since then, I've discovered that I am even, better at it. I don't freeze or fawn as much when people are trying to help me, or when people are trying to cross my boundaries. Mm-hmm. In those different ways.
I remember many times being in New York City or in other large cities, but New York especially, wanting to cross a street and go a particular way, waiting for the traffic flow to be going the way I wanted
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that it's going the way I want, and somebody will come up and grab me. Oh, let me help you. And of course, the problem is they don't even know for sure which way I want to go.
Correct.
Which really makes life fun. And so they'll grab me and I go, no, hold on a minute. First of all, I'm really good. Do you know why I'm just standing here? No, you're obviously you need help. No, let me explain, Ricky. And, but it is so unfortunate that people make these assumptions, and it happens all too often. It goes back to the basic view of blindness that people have, which is that we really don't know what we're doing, and we can't really do it ourselves. That you need to have eyesight to do it, which is why earlier this year at the National Federation of the Blind Convention, I crafted the resolution that was adopted that says we need to stop using the term visually impaired and go to blind and low vision. And I mean, there are other terms, but the real issue is to get rid of the concept of impaired, which is what the professionals brought to the field many years ago, which was such a disservice.
Yeah, I can agree. The word impaired is not the greatest term we want to be using in that realm. And in all my teaching of self-defense, the people coming up and grabbing is the number one frustration that we deal with as a blind community. And it's the reason that people want to learn self-defense, because they want to be able to figure out, how do I get myself out of this situation? And that's where, verbal craft is that first step of, if you can talk them down, that's the ideal situation. And then of course, we're going to be bringing more choices of, they don't want to do that. That's okay. We got some other skills for that too. So.
Yeah. Well, and it's important to really learn to use all the skills that we have available, which is of course something that gets back to the whole issue of using your mind. And that's just something that all too often, if I were really abusive, I'd say that's something that every politician should learn to do, is to use their mind, but they haven't learned that yet. So that's another story. But that was mean. But the reality is that we need to learn to listen better than we do.
Well, I mean, the common saying is you have two ears and one mouth, because you're supposed to do twice as much listening. And that also plays a lot into the situational awareness. Is, sometimes you have to just stop talking so you can pay attention to what is going on around you.
Right.
I know, like with my friends and my team, they know if I'm stopped talking, they need to start paying attention themselves, because I don't usually stop mid-sentence. I'm like, wait a minute, what? I start kind of perking my ears and trying to figure
something.
out. Yeah. And we've created different code words and stuff like that to help everybody be on the same page, to support people in that journey too.
Cool. Well, it's important. So what are the basic core values, the core things that go into Safety Positive Foundation and that kind of guide what you do?
So we have 5 core values. One is safety, of course. Innovation, because I've been told numerous times we are pioneering new paths with what we're bringing in. So and we're always looking for other things that the community needs to bring in as well. We also have potential as one of them, because we do believe in the potential of people in general. And then we also have agency, because we strongly believe in people having choices when it comes to their personal safety. And authenticity is our last one. And this one, it took a little bit to get everybody on board, because I am very authentic myself. And so they were like, we're not talking about you. And I'm like, I know that, but people feel safer when they can be their authentic selves. Yeah. And that's what we want to support, is, you getting comfortable with you and knowing that you have those, choices, potential, and those things. So we strongly believe in our core values.
And having the ability, or learning to have the ability, to analyze who you are, what you do, what you're doing, and when necessary, make changes, or to reaffirm that what you do is a good thing, whatever it is.
Yes, yeah. Sometimes people need that permission to, change their mind or be on the path that they're being on. On our tea times, I am very well known for telling people, does anybody have questions, comments, concerns, or emotional outburst? And because I want to give people that space to, if they need to just yell it out, yell it out. We're here to support you.
Yeah. Sometimes that's important and necessary to do.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Why is the foundation called Safety Positive Foundation?
We created that name, and actually, I created that name because I got tired of the fear mongering that was going on with the self-defense organizations and programs that already existed in the blind community. In fact, I had been told one time that I needed to be more negative in pitching, and trying to scare people. And I'm like, I refuse. I will not do that. Our community is already scared enough, and no way am I, going to hammer home all the statistics and stuff like that. People already have fear. And so in that, I played around with words. Of course, I have SP in the middle of my name. And so I was like, well, safety positive, like we're all about safety, we want to be positive. And then one of my board members was like, well, we need to add foundation, because we're building a foundation here. And I'm like, there it is, Safety Positive Foundation was born, just based off of the collection of all that.
There you go. And it works. How is it different from other self-defense and similar kinds of organizations? Because I'm sure that you feel that it is definitely different.
Yes, we have created it different from the beginning, because when we launched, we focused on psychological safety. People would ask me, well, where's the hands-on? I'm like, nope, we're not doing it yet, because psychological safety needs to be that first step on your journey, especially if you have a lot of fear when it comes to personal safety. So that was the mindset that we intentionally chose. The other thing that I would say that probably differentiates us is, of course, the choices, and that as of right now, we don't have it to where you can sign up, pay a bunch of money, and become an instructor in our program. We're not interested in making money off of that. We are interested in bringing people in as instructors at some point, and we've talked about doing that next year. But we want to be very mindful of how that approach works, because people have gotten trained in other programs, and then they go off and do their own thing. And we're like, no, because we want to make sure that the curriculum you are teaching is safety positive focus. We don't want people running off and trying to fear monger like they had been taught before. So that's our method to our madness.
Well, I may not know that the whole idea of fear is a subject that is near and dear to me, because recently I published a new book called Live Like a Guide Dog, True Stories from a Blind Man and His Dogs, about being brave, overcoming adversity, and moving forward in faith. And the whole idea behind the book is to get people to understand that they can learn to control fear, and that you don't need to have fear forced on you. And the reality is that all the negative aspects of fear that you've been talking about is what promotes fear. Yes. And I picked on politicians before, but that's what they do. They promote fear to a very large degree themselves. And yes, promoting all this fear just makes people negative. It makes people be mistrustful. And the fact of the matter is that if we really learn to understand fear, which also is involved in developing the mind, as we've been talking about, but if we really focus on understanding fear, what we learn is that we can control fear and that fear can be a very powerful tool to help us. So it isn't about not being afraid. It's about using that fear to focus and not let it, as I would say, blind or overwhelm you.
Yes. Again, 100% agreeing with you on that. The more that you can, I'd say, dare say, lean into the fear, and make it your friend, that that helps so much. It's also part of that muscle memory of going, okay, I don't need to be fearful in this situation. And we actually talk about that in our verbal craft training, how your brain state works when, something happens to you and how you can move through that.
Well, and that's exactly right. The issue is moving through it. I mean, if something happens, I was in the World Trade Center on September 11th and something happened, right? So there's a lot to be afraid of. But if you prepare and learn to control your own mind, then that fear becomes a very powerful tool to help you focus. And learning to listen to that inner voice is one of the most important things that we can ever do in our lives.
Yes, I've actually used my personal safety training to help me to heal from some of my past traumas. And, even to the point where practicing certain techniques that had been, done on me to how do I get out of this? And that really, at the first few times, oh yeah, anxiety was real high. And
sure.
But the more you lean into it, the more you work through it, it can be helpful. The unfortunate part is for some situations, like what you went through in 9/11, ain't nobody preparing you for that.
Well, but, not directly, but what you learn, what you learn. So like with me in September 11th, I learned all about emergency evacuations. I learned all about where things were in the World Trade Center. And I learned and I mentioned being in Boston and dealing with unexpected street crossings with cars coming and all that. You learn how to deal with surprise.
Yes.
And so it wasn't like there was anything magically brand new at the World Trade Center. So all of the skills, all of the life preparation for me over the previous 51 years, ooh, that gives away my age. But all that life preparation made it possible to learn to and actually control fear so that I was able to use it in a constructive way, which is what the whole point is.
Yes. And that's why I think we've mentioned, like, the more you can learn, the more those things won't surprise you, and you're going to be ready to handle when life's throwing you curveballs.
Right. And life tends to have a habit of doing that.
Yeah. Universe has a sense of humor.
It does have a sense of humor, but when it's throwing the curveballs, you can learn to hit those curveballs. So it's okay.
Yes.
It's not a bad thing. How is the community reacting to Safety Positive Foundation and what you're doing and so on?
Overwhelming happiness. Anytime I tell people we are here to offer choices, I've heard statements like, finally, thank goodness. And I know from our trainings that we offer, it's been completely game changing for people who have went through our trainings. They feel way more safe. We actually had one of our community people that flat out told me, if it was not for Safety Positive Foundation, I would not have went to the National Federation of the Blind Convention, because they just didn't feel like they were prepared. And I think it was a combination of learning things, and then of course us being there to help support them if something happened. But yeah, that was, I was floored when I heard that statement. I was like, do what? That was us. So we're bringing people out of their houses.
Well, things happen at conventions, and unfortunately, I don't know of any convention where things of one sort or another don't happen to one degree or another. So it is a matter of being prepared, but it's also a matter of monitoring yourself and knowing what you're going to allow yourself to get into and not get into to a degree as well.
Yes, absolutely. And like before we went, we had a safety briefing for our community to give them the rundown. And it was so overwhelming. I'm like, okay, apparently we're going to keep doing this, because they felt more prepared and safe for those different things, and knew if something did happen, what policies, procedures to follow, or who to be able to contact.
Yeah. And the National Federation has become a little bit more aware, and
Yes, they have.
has helped
Yes.
in that process, which is also a good thing.
Yes, I would very much agree with that as well.
But people do need to really take responsibility for themselves and their own actions. And so doing what you do clearly helps, I would think. So what role do partnerships play in what you do, and how is that affecting everything?
So when we, with our partners, we bring in different people for different reasons, but essentially it's to make sure our community has more resources for their personal safety. For example, we have partnered with Allie Slaughter, who teaches yoga. That, yoga can be very beneficial in so many ways. We also have partnered with Navi Lens to start working with them, because they are a company that offers these they're specialized QR codes, but it can help you to navigate different areas. But not only that, you can create your own. It's not like you got to wait for the company to do it. So you can label things around your house where it'll be able to, which remote or which seasoning. The part I really like is it does it in multiple different languages. So it's not just a one and done deal. And then we've also partnered, our most recent partner is Penny Forward, and they teach financial literacy for the blind. And I'm like, financial safety, it is a thing. Like it seems like a very natural partnership here. So
Yeah.
We partner with people that are interested in helping the blind community become more safe.
Do you just work with the blind community, or do sighted or any persons without traditional disabilities ever become involved and become students and so on?
So we actually, we've had some sighted people attend our trainings and events, and we are working behind the scenes to develop some different trainings for sighted individuals so they can communicate and interact with the blind community in a safe fashion, or just the disabled community. But there's so much information, out there. I feel like a lot of sighted people kind of don't know where to go, how to do stuff. And so we wanted to build that bridge of communication between the sighted or the non-disabled world and the disabled community. I'd also like to note that, blind people typically, blindness is not their only concern. Sometimes people have mental health struggles or other types of disabilities. So we do work with other disabilities as a result. We're not, because we're a not-for-profit and we're new, we got to sort of niche down to the blind community, but we are happy to serve the disabled community as well, because from what I'm learning, all disabilities lack personal safety choices.
They do, or think they do, or probably both.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is it amounts to the same thing.
Yes.
Well, we met certainly through the NFB convention, and then also I know that Sheldon Lewis from Accessibility has reached out to you guys, and I don't know.
Oh, that's you made me forget about my apologies to Accessibility, but yes, they are also one of our newest partners as well, making our website accessible. We're happy to share it with our other friends and stuff. Like, yeah, I love Sheldon from Accessibility. He's one of my new friends.
There you go.
Whether he wants it or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pleasure that we're also working with Accessibility as well.
That's pretty cool. I haven't been to the site and looked at it yet. I should really go visit the website, but because I've been now with Accessibility for 3.5 years. It'll be 4 years in January. So having a lot of fun. And again, I like the philosophy that it deals with a variety of different kinds of disabilities. And you're right. The fact is that whether we bring it upon ourselves or it's real, and it's probably both, we end up not having a lot of choices that we should have. But I think that that's what we need to do, as you point out, is to learn to advocate for ourselves to bring those choices back into our lives.
Yes. When I was talking with Sheldon from Accessibility about us partnering with them, I said, absolutely, because not only will it ensure our website's accessible, but I'm happy to tell people about it, because when blind people cannot navigate a website, it plays a big role into their psychological safety. And I'm a mental health first aid person, certified person, and my joke was I needed mental health first aid training to go through the training. Like it stressed me out because it was so inaccessible. Yeah. And I had to have people continuously helping me. And I actually had to take the course twice because of the lack of accessibility that first go around, and had to have people help me and stuff. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like we definitely need to promote that more. And I'm so glad that they're just, willing to work with non-for-profits that are serving the disabled space. Like that is going to be game changing for so many people and help them to feel more psychologically safe in going to those websites. They're not going to get stressed out and figuring out, how do I navigate this? Nope. Accessibility's got you.
So, here's a question, and I've asked a number of people this, but I'm curious to hear your answer. You mentioned earlier that we're not really involved in a lot of the conversations, whether it be about self-defense, whether it be about personal safety and so on. Why is it that blind, or in general persons with disabilities, aren't involved in the conversations?
That is a great question. And I think that for some topics, it goes back to fear of being vulnerable in sharing what you're afraid of, at least for personal safety. For some topics, they're hot topics. We discuss weapons in Safety Positive Foundation, and tell people if that's a choice you want, we're happy to have the conversation. But people think that talking about weapons means that people are going to start buying firearms and getting involved with it, or bad things can happen. And that's where I go back to if we're having a conversation about it, you can ask your questions and not have that fear wrapped around those particular topics. But that would be my personal answer.
Yeah, I think all too often, suddenly weapons are the easy answer. Yes. But they're not.
No.
But they're not at all. But that's what people think, and they think that's going to take care of all of their fears, and it just doesn't work that way.
Because often, and it's statistically backed up, oftentimes those things will get turned on you, especially if you're not doing ongoing practice. And that's part of that proactive philosophy we talk about in Safety Positive, is if you're choosing to use any kind of tool or device, you better be practicing with it at least once a month, minimum. And depending on the tool, we're recommending even stronger practicing. Yeah. But you can't just buy a pepper spray, drop it in your purse, and you're good. Like, no, because what happens when they do come to grab you? You're going to be finagling, and but yeah, it's
and then you aim it the wrong way because you're not used to it. Yep, exactly. And it's so important. Well, again, it goes back to like what we talked about before with the mind, which is the most important tool that we have. And if we don't develop that tool by constant, and I believe it has to be constant use and constant us teaching ourselves, we're not going to improve with it.
Exactly. We are blessed right now that we have as much technology at our fingertips to be able to phone a friend or use that app to help us cross the street, whatever the case might be. But technology fails. And so you can't say that this is going to be my backup for everything. Or for one of the things that I've learned is you can't take your pepper spray through, TSA, and there's certain things that no, TSA don't like it. So if you get too used to one kind of tool, it gets taken. Well, then what do? You have to have your own mind to go, okay, I can handle this without all the fancy gizmos and gadgets.
Yeah. And TSA does what it does generally for pretty good reasons.
Yes. Yeah. I understand their method to the madness, but it's still frustrating.
Oh, I know it is. You come all prepared and then they take it away from you. And
yeah.
So of course the answer to that is you've got to put it somewhere in a bag where it's not reachable while you're on the flight. But that's another story.
Yeah, well, conversation for another day. Not that I'm working on a short list of things that'll get through TSA, but
Well, let me ask this then. I think a relevant question. What are the future goals for Safety Positive Foundation?
We want to be the safety institution for the blind community. And so that's why we're very interested in bringing on more choices for trainings and working with different partners. So, when people think of personal safety in the blind community, their first thought is Safety Positive Foundation.
And that's pretty important to be able to do. For you, what's been the most rewarding experience you've had with Safety Positive Foundation?
I would have to say it's watching the community grow as individuals. Like I said, the one person that said, if it wasn't for Safety Positive, I wouldn't have came. And I've heard, other people telling me that they feel safer and just learning different stuff. And that is the paycheck for me when I know we're making a difference in people's lives. Sometimes it makes me want to cry. I get, so overwhelmed, but I essentially do not want people to go through what I've went through in my life. And so the more that we can reach people and offer those resources and trainings, that's what's going to do it for me.
So, especially for blind people, but in general, what would be the message that you would most like for the community to hear from you regarding safety and Safety Positive Foundation?
When it comes to, I guess, sharing with the sighted community, be aware I'm teaching them that no is a complete sentence. And they don't got to give you their backstory of why they don't want to accept your help. And if somebody doesn't want to take your assistance, don't take it personal. There's so many people who do take it personal when you tell them, no, I've got this. It's not about you. It's about people having the dignity and respect for themselves to sometimes do things on their own. or talk to you about how maybe you can assist them in a different manner. But yeah, just don't take it personal, and no, you're also probably going to mess up a time or two. You're not always going to get it perfect, because I know me as a person in the community, I mess it up sometimes. So.
There's a lot of value in getting lost. And
Yes.
I worked in the World Trade Center a lot to get lost, because when you get lost, then you got to figure out, how did you get lost and how do you get out of being lost? And people helping isn't going to give you that learning experience of recovering, or, using what we call structured discovery. The bottom line is,
yeah,
go ahead.
I say I love the structured discovery. My whole organization, my board, when they I've got a couple of sighted board members, and they were new to the blind community, but knew it needed, they were the ones who convinced me to start this. But once they learned about structured discovery, they were like, this is awesome. Like, because I'd tell them, don't help people, let them figure it out. And they'd watch, and they learned real fast that, okay, yeah, there is a method to the madness here.
Yeah, it's important to be able to deal with variety of things, and you're going to be best if you teach yourself how to recover from being lost. Very quickly, what is structured discovery?
So my understanding, because I've not been given the quote unquote definition, is where you have an environment to where you are walking through it yourself, and discovering your environment on your own with your white cane, your guide dog, but you're essentially discovering the environment on your own accord. Yeah, is my understanding. Michael, you might have a different answer, but that's my understanding.
Well, and the other part of it is, you're walking along, you expect to be going somewhere, and suddenly you discover you're not where you thought you were, or you walk on grass and you didn't expect to be there. Structured discovery also teaches you how what you do is you step back mentally and then physically, but you step back, you go back and retrace what you did to figure out where it is that you deviated from the path that you were expecting to be on. And it works very well.
I've used it in all the traveling I do. Yes, I've gotten lost and had to backtrack. And how did we do this? Where did we go wrong? And believe me, I'll never forget those routes.
Tell me, how do people get involved in the Safety Positive Foundation if they would like to?
So there's a couple different options. You can go to our website at safetypositivefdn.org. You can also, we have a YouTube channel with lots of videos on different information, and we have our Facebook page. The Facebook page and our website has links where you can come in and be part of our Safety Positive Guide community. Or you can also email us, phone call. Just don't send smoke signals. We're not going to get those.
Yeah. Don't raise your hand. That doesn't work.
No, it's lost on us.
Yeah, it is on all of us, that's okay. It's always something to be learned. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here with us for more than the last hour. It's been fun, and I hope that people have learned something from it. We'll definitely get to see you next year at the NFB convention, I assume, and that'll be kind of fun too.
Yes, we're going to be there with bells on. So.
There you go. Well,
yep.
we'll be there, and yeah, and I'll bring my dog over, and either he'll teach self-defense or he'll learn self-defense. I'm not sure which.
There we go.
He'll probably be looking for ear scratches and nothing else, so it's okay.
We all need a little love from time to time.
Yeah, and he's good at that. Well, thank you again for being here. This has been absolutely enjoyable, And if you've enjoyed listening to us, please let us know. You can email me at Michael H.I., Michaelhi at accessibe, accessibe.com. You can also go to our podcast page where there's a contact form, and that's www.michaelhingson.com/podcast. That's michaelhingson.com/podcast. We'd love to hear from you. And wherever you're listening or monitoring our podcast today, I hope that you'll give us a 5-star review. We really value your reviews. We appreciate it. If you know of anyone, and Amy, you as well, if you know of anyone who you think might be a good guest for the podcast, we'd like to hear from you. We'd like you to provide an introduction. We're always looking for people who want to come on and tell their stories and help all of us see why we're all more unstoppable than we think we are. So I want to thank you all for that as well. And Amy, once again, really appreciate you being here today. This has been a lot of fun.
I appreciate it. And I will end with my 2 cents of keep it safe, keep it positive, and keep it safety positive.